Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Universe Within podcast. On this episode, I sat down with a really fascinating woman. Her name is Yukia, and I met her a few weeks ago, interestingly, at a little get-together with a friend of mine, Paulette, who I also interviewed on this podcast. And we had a really fascinating conversation. I spoke to her a little bit at this gathering, and even though we only spoke for a little while, I sensed she had a really fascinating story and really a lot to share. And I didn't know exactly what to expect from this episode, where we would go, what kind of topics we would get into, but I was really happy with it. I mean, kind of looking back on it, I think it was really, in a way, a masterclass of a lot of work in spirituality, of ancient culture, of indigenous cultures, of plant medicine work, of connecting to our higher selves, to a lot of the problems and issues that can arise. And it was really a lovely conversation, and I very much enjoyed it, and I learned quite a bit myself. So I think and hope you all will really enjoy this episode. As always, if you're able to support this podcast, that's a really big help. If you are able to sign up via Patreon, that's a really beautiful way of supporting this podcast, supporting me, helping to continue to bring on these really fascinating guests. You can sign up for as little as $1 a month. There's different tiers you can sign up for. Those tiers give you different things back, things like early access to shows, bonus material, Q&As. To all of the people who have done that, to all of the patrons, as always, thank you very much. It's very deeply appreciated. Thank you for all your support. And if you are able to do that, thank you in advance. If you're not able to help that way, some of the little things make a really big difference. So if you're watching this, the video version on YouTube or Rumble Odyssey, subscribing to the show on YouTube, turning on the notification bell, liking the video, leaving any questions or comments in the comment section, all of those things really help with the algorithms to really get the show out to a bigger audience. And then if you're listening to this on the audio version, the biggest platforms being Apple Podcasts and Spotify, following or subscribing to the show, leaving a starred rating and a short review, all of those things, again, are super beneficial. So I think that's it. Without further ado, here is my conversation with Yukia.
Running out from the maze, running out of the maze today. From the maze, running out from the maze, running out from the maze today. I'm running out from the maze, running out from the maze, run out of the maze today.
Looks kind of professional.
It does. It does.
And this is, I have a really big one from my university, but it's huge and I didn't feel like bringing it. But that guy up there is the guy who started it. He was the third president. His name was Thomas Jefferson.
Oh, yeah.
And he actually founded the university I went to. And I think when I went there, I appreciated it, but not a lot. And I think
what did you do?
The older I get, the
At
more
university?
I appreciate. I ended up studying political science and economics, but I also studied archaeology and anthropology, but it wasn't my major. But yeah, he was a pretty incredible human being.
He was. From all of them,
Mm-hmm.
there were only a few incredible ones.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think in the U.S. people have really forgotten like how revolutionary like their line of thinking was. It was quite.
It was. I studied international relations. My majors were international relations and sociology.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
actually,
I wanted to go into the diplomatic. I was going to go to the diplomatic to have a diplomatic career.
Yeah.
But then, when I finished My masters, I didn't speak Afrikaans, and I was in South Africa. Now, in order to get into the embassy, you had to speak Afrikaans.
Interesting.
Yeah. It was one of those discriminative situations still. So it was English and Afrikaans, and I had English and French. And so I had a block with Afrikaans, because every time I tried it, I would pronounce it in like a French, and just couldn't get. I just had a block with the language, because the language represented all this discrimination also. So there was a program that was running, a belief program, which I realized later on why I couldn't do it, because it's quite a simple language, But I just would not learn, and I'm good with languages, but that one, no. And so it was because of all that, and me being in the apartheid movement against the system, and being quite an activist, it just didn't fall well, So the resistance came, and so I changed course. Then I went with my sociology. I'll do another master's. So I did a master's in sociology, and then I went. I ended up in human capital and human resources change and transformation. Yeah.
Well, this is all great. I say we get into it.
Yeah, sure.
And so I met you, I guess, a few weeks ago at a kind of a party get together of a mutual friend of ours, Paulette, who was also on this podcast. And you had a really interesting story, and so I thought it would be nice to have you on and share. So maybe just picking up from right there. So you were from South Africa originally?
Yeah.
And...
No, I'm originally from Mozambique. I was born in Mozambique, which was a Portuguese colony. So Portuguese is still a language today that it's spoken by everyone, because there's many local languages, so it would be very difficult to choose one. So I grew up in Mozambique until the age of 14. And then there was a coup d'etat, the Portuguese government walked out, and the local government, the African government, walked in, and so myself and my sister went to South Africa, to this boarding school. Which was like a radical change for us, because it was quite a free system, in terms of free to think, free to do, free to wear whatever we wanted, and
in Mozambique?
In Mozambique. And free to mix also with all languages and diversity. Acceptance of, the diversity that existed in the country, and then then we went, because my parents had to remain another 2 years behind in order to close off their contracts, and also their pending transfers to South Africa, So yes, we went to South Africa then.
And what was the impetus to move? Just the uncertainty of...
Yes, it was. It became very difficult. They actually asked all the Europeans to leave, unless you had contracts and contacts with companies where you had indispensable positions, you wouldn't be able to stay in the country. You were kicked out, basically. And because my parents had such contracts, with their own business, with the businesses that they're working for, they had to complete the 2-year cycle and then go. But if their position was not essential or regarded as, they would have been kicked out of the country. So we kicked out, and everything was taken over by the government. So my grandfather's farm, all the goods that you had were all nationalized. Yeah, so that was...
I'm not so familiar with Mozambique, but it was a Portuguese colony. But were there large populations from other part of the world too? Like in South Africa, there's a lot of South Asians. Like
there were lots of Hindu and lot of Muslims and lots of Portuguese, but there wasn't a lot of foreigners at the time. A few Italians, a few Spanish, but that was it. It's mainly Portuguese. Yeah.
And at that time of transition, some of the other groups were also kind of condemned, like the Hindus.
They were invited to leave, yeah. But you see, the Asian population, the Indian population had a grasp in the economy of about maybe 70%, 50 to 70%. So it wasn't as easy as, to just kick them out, because they controlled a lot of the economy and also the trade, So, yes, they were invited out, and most of them, certainly most children, the same age as ours, they all left to go to Portugal. So they went to Portugal, they went to India, but mainly they went to Portugal because they were Portuguese, they had been born in the country, so, or they went to Goa, which was Portuguese speaking. And all the others went to South Africa because it was the neighboring country. So we were divided. Half went to Portugal, half went to South Africa. Yeah.
And South Africa was welcoming at that time?
Yes, very welcoming. Very welcoming. It welcomed immigrants from all the African countries. We were very well received. Also programs of adjustment and adaptation at the time, were immediately put into place. Also orientation programs to adjust, to adapt to what South Africa was like, which was very different than what Mozambique was like, So we were given space and time to learn the language, to catch up. We were not really pressurized. The school that we went to was an English convent, so it was like Catholic, quite strict, but they had a very good team of teachers, mostly English, and they were really, upcoming. They had a very open mind, and so, although there were a lot of restrictions for us in terms of you wear the uniform, you had the hat in a certain way, you have to attend mass, you have to go to confession and all those things, which I waived it, because you could rebel against the system if you wanted, if you had a good argument and a good proposition for the headmaster. And so mine was the hat and the religious studies. I didn't have to wear the hat, and I didn't have to attend any Bible classes or religious studies. In fact, they preferred me not to attend because I asked a lot of questions. And that was intimidating. That was like not accepted. First, that you ask questions, and second, I planted seeds in other people and in the minds of the students, and they didn't want that. They would prefer me to be out. But I was allowed to do it. So even within, I learned very young that even within a very limited environment where there is lots of rules, lots of regulations, if you speak up and you stand in your power and you argue that, which is for the benefit of all, not just for your benefit, it is possible to change. Because the headmaster didn't, it just took 2 meetings for him to accept it, And all my episodes in schools and with Bible studies, I never attended Bible studies. never, in any of the schools. And they had a strict regulation that you had to, So it depends how you stand and what is how you put it across, and at what level of frequency you're coming from, not coming from, it is not for me, but it is for the benefit of all that I am not attending. It's for my benefit, but for the benefit of the rest. Seeing that everyone is in the program and I am not in that particular program. Not that the program is wrong. I choose not to be. Mm-hmm. And so that was a very early lesson that I learned, growing up, that you need to stand on your own. You need to speak up. And you also need to speak up for others, which I did quite a lot of that. And then realized that they had to speak for themselves, that I wasn't here to rescue anyone, But it was interesting, the change, the freedom to be, the freedom to speak, the freedom to choose. Suddenly, that we experienced growing up, in a family that was all receiving, that was all loving and supporting of your choices, your fantasy trips, your imagination, and then go into a strict environment where there's all these rules, you had to make a choice, because there's no way that I could go somewhere else. So you had to make a choice, and you can make a choice and make changes, because then there were other immigrants that came to the college. Some also didn't wear the hat, Others didn't attend the religious classes or mass, or some sports that was like, there was a list that you had compulsory to attend, even though you were not sporty, because it was part of the curriculum, part of the program. Now, we were sporty, so we didn't have that particular problem. But if you were a nerd, only, intellect with just intellectual ability and no sports skill set, you would have to stand for yourself on that one,
Do you think being I often find there's something about being an outsider that it just by de facto forces people to look at a different worldview, to see things from another point of view, and it seems like there's a real power in that, which
there is
something that I think, we all come from a certain cosmovision, a certain society, a certain worldview, and I think there's a lot of things we just accept because we never question them, because we're never put in a situation where we need to question them.
Yes.
And it seems like often with a lot of people who are kind of loosely involved in this work, I don't even know how to define it, but it seems like there often is this kind of common archetype of somehow being an outsider in some degree, of being forced to look at something in a different way.
Yeah. There are advantages and disadvantages, which I found. In the beginning, I thought there were just disadvantages. And then I soon started finding out that I was heard. I was able to be heard. And the reason that others were not is because they were not making any steps to be heard, because they were in fear of the program that they've inherited from the country, from their parents. And because we were outsiders, we had a certain flexibility, let's call it this way. There was a leeway because we came from a coup d'etat, we came from a great transition, but the family had to separate. So there were a lot of factors that that inspired the system to give us leeway, But you wouldn't have found out if you had not tried it, because in the beginning the rules were laid out. And you either followed or you you spoke up. And I think in life that was one of the biggest lessons that I learned right then when I was so young, that anything was possible, even within a very limited system. There is, if you really stand and you speak and you inspire, you speak with an inspired voice, because it had to be that way, with an inspired voice, for the benefit of all, and for the other students that were coming from different independent countries, because this movement, this coup d'etat didn't just happen in Mozambique, it happened in many of the African countries. So we had a lot of students coming from different countries, that would have had the same challenges. So, so there was an opening and also a role to play in terms of leading that opening, opening that channel for others to have a voice without the questions why, because I remember my first meetings were met with a lot of whys from the headmaster, and then the second one was much easier, so they didn't have to go through the whys anymore because somebody else had done that. And I think that was important. And it also inspired me to then later on join the apartheid system, the apartheid movement, at university level, which, it was needed at the time that a whole lot of us had to come together and do something, and I knew that doing something was positive because I had done it, at a small scale, at a very tiny scale, and so it was very easy for me to step into that without any fear of being labeled in the university as one of those, because you were labeled. The label was there. That is one of the activists, So we didn't have a sticker, but we had an informal sticker. Everybody knew who we were. But it didn't matter, because there was no ways that the system could penalize you academically if you were delivering what you needed to deliver. There was no ways. There wasn't space in that. And if there was, then there was a voice again, and there was a step system, because there were a few cases, not particularly with me, but with some of my brothers in arms, let's call it this way. And they took it to an appeal situation. And they were heard. And it was considered also one of the freer universities, the one that I attended in South Africa, where independent thought was encouraged. So I chose that one because I knew that this was going to take place. So I needed to be in a place that could welcome that. Yeah.
What was that like growing up during that time? Because it's a very unique period, I think, in modern human history, and I think a lot of people are familiar with it, but they don't really have a very nuanced view of what was happening. But I think everyone is familiar with that word apartheid, or to some degree what was happening. But like everywhere, obviously, being in a place there's so much history, there's so much nuance, there's so many different points of view and different things going on. What was that like coming in from another country, being an outsider, and maybe just kind of to describe that situation from your eyes? What was that like?
Yeah, that was like, it was limiting, That was the first impact was the perception of the program. The program was not so in your face in the country where I was born. because we had a lot of freedom options. And within the family unit also there were freedom options. But then you get into a country that is full of rules and full of separate. So the birth of separation for me was one of the most painful challenges to see from an outsider. And then came the injustice and the fairness of it. So almost an anger, came to the surface, that was already there, because, it was already there as an example when I rescued the underdog that was being penalized unfairly by the teacher, But this anger was a collective wound, almost a collective consciousness wound of where injustice through programming, is set in a society and everybody becomes a puppet of the system. And the manipulation and the control kicks in, and then you have no voice, or the perception of not having a voice. And then the birth of separation was like in your face. That coming from a free system, which I called a free system, was a big challenge. There was pain in my heart, There was this. I used to feel a pulse in my heart, like saying something has to be done, And that's when the rebel, or the options and the potentials. It was through the pain, through feeling the pain, through allowing myself to sit with the anger, to cry a lot. I remember I was so young, but I used to cry for the people, like we go into a coffee shop and you can't take your friend from the convent that is from Nigeria or somewhere else. They have to go somewhere else. They can't use the same toilets. It was very painful. It was like there was a built-up inside that this is not who we are. This is not what we came here to do. This is not how we chose to come to this planet. That was very evident that all these things started coming up, That's this, we are whole, we are united, we should be in partnership, in community, and not separate, and this is unfair and unjust. And I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to be part of this plight for freedom of expression, for freedom of rights, of human rights. Yeah. So I had that experience on the one side. On the other side, it was very interesting, and only afterwards it came through. When I left the convent, went to university, was that there was a certain amount of discipline that I felt was positive through that system. There was also an awareness of boundaries that I learned, that there is self-honoring, but there is first an awareness of boundaries. What is my space? What is your space? What is my fairness? What is your fairness? How can we coexist together within acceptable human and loving boundaries? And that was beneficial to me, because where I came from, that was absent in many ways. So if we had remained in that system and the system had not changed, then I think that awareness that the birth of value, of self-value and self-honoring, wouldn't have been birthed so soon, because you had to learn how to operate within boundaries, what they were, what were the limitations, and things could get quite out of control, in an environment where no one really knows exactly what the rules are and what guidance we have, And so there was temptation to do what you want, and step into what I called, having learned then about the boundaries and then self-honoring and value later on, that I could have gone, into places that would have taken me astray, from the direction that I was destined to take, because it was evident from very young that there was this leadership quality, and that I was here to do something more than just taking care of me and making sure that I'm successful, but that I'm here for a bigger cause. And so that could have distracted me from that path. Yeah. So, and the discipline, certain rules of discipline was also important. That I appreciated those. That you wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I used to wake up 7 o'clock, rush half an hour into school, in Mozambique, and come back for lunch, and go to sports and walk around the streets, and we were really free to do what we wanted to do. Yeah.
It reminds me, in a lot of Chinese philosophy, of this idea of wu wei, or it's kind of this idea of action and non-action, and even in a political sense, there's this idea of progressivism versus conservatism. And it seems like one of the things we do as humans is we tend to gravitate more towards one direction, but then it's very difficult for us to come back into some sort of balance, to
Exactly.
see the wisdom of the other side,
Yes.
and to find that
It's
balance.
very true, and that's exactly, in retrospection, I was already at university, now in a movement, I was also involved as the secretary of the Portuguese sort of club, in the university, and when it was so beneficial that I had that discipline to fit everything in, to be able to manage all these processes without derailing, because you brought up something important that I found at that time, and if it wasn't for that, it would have been very difficult to make it, is the balance, to make sure that I had this balance. Initially I thought it was just that I was obsessed with control, that I had to control the situation here, control the situation there. But then, I started really allowing myself to experience a little bit of psychedelics through acid, so that, because that was one way of me connecting to my home base, and very quickly, a shortcut, and that broke my control mechanism, that I can handle everything, but I have to have a hand in the pie of everything, and it has to be done this way. And the choice to go to start taking drugs, for a while in the last 2 years of university, what allowed me that space to see it from the outside, that I was becoming obsessively controlling, you know, with myself, and not allowing myself to feel the experience, but to go like a robot, like, you know, almost like handle things automatically, very clinically, almost like a star being, you know, someone that is not of this planet, is borrowed to this planet, and is just in witnessing and observer mode, but really not does not feeling the emotional body, is not feeling anything, is just going through the different transmutations and the ability to handle a lot of things at the same time. That it's not a skill that everyone has, but if you do have that skill, then it even gives you more this feeling that you are able to handle it, you know. And the option to go into the to go into to take substances, you know, that took me out of that control and gave me the observer, you know, mode of that control, that I could see what I was doing and how I was doing it, and it broke down that control system, and allowed me to be in the feeling body, you know, afterwards. So there was it was a big journey for me to handle everything at the same time, plus have my escapades into freedom, into the feeling body, into my own connection with the stars and other planets, and but to feel it with the heart. Yeah, to feel it with the heart and to understand the human condition in a different way. Yeah. And also to understand that there was a point of completion of that substance abuse for me. And it was a gift, actually, that point of completion. Because then, you know, I fell pregnant. So that was my point of completion. The minute I learned that I was pregnant, I wanted to welcome this incredible being, and I gave up all the substances. And it was a gift. It was an absolute gift coming out so of that experience. But it was also there was also the realization that was an opening that I needed to take, that I had understood things that are at a different frequency level, that I had not done it before if it wasn't for the substances, you know, the invitation to go and to just relax, because I wasn't able to relax. I had to be always in. So I had to bring balance too. So when the balance kicked in and the presence set in, there was the silence inside. And there was also the understanding that balance and equilibrium as a centeredness inside you is like a discipline, you know, but it's a healthy discipline. Yeah, there was this. And I was exploring the Tao and the reading all the spiritual books, the Tibetan knowledge, and so during that period, it was a period of great tapping into all the aspects of myself and the versions of myself that were lived either in body, which I understood later on, or not in body, but in the collective consciousness of the planet, where those practices, healing methodologies, and exercises, like martial arts and all those was like a bucket list of things that the soul had experienced either in body or outside body, or in Platon or off planet. But it was through the books that the wisdom came. So that was like a door that opened, that was waiting. And I had a library in my house that was full of books, and sometimes I would even sleep there. I had like a little sofa, all set up. So if I just wanted to stay there, I would stay. And I would just read all the books. I was just like a sponge.
So then, what was the next phase of your life? So you're either in or finished with university. You're pregnant.
Yeah, then
you have all of this interest and knowledge and religion and
yes, it was like
spirituality.
a phase that was, okay, I have so much to share and so much to create, but I'm in this situation, and I had a lot of assistance from my parents, who were extremely welcoming of my choices, because you always have a choice to give up the child. And it was offered to me, and I declined it. I had a great group of friends that were like supportive all the way. And then 5 years later, I met this beautiful man. I got married, and that was my first husband. And yeah, I adopted the child, and then at that stage I was already in corporate life, because I'd already taken the step. I had someone to look after my child. I had my family. I had my friends. I had nurseries. I had, there were. I got into my career of human resources, and recruitment first, then human resources, then organizational and change management, and moved very fast. When I was 27, I was already in management positions, and and bringing in quite good money, to fend for myself even before getting married. So I had I knew I was on track. I'm on track. This is a phase, to open up to something greater that will come down the line. But I need to go through this. I need to experience family. I need to experience bringing up children. I need to experience being with a partner. I need to experience, being in a corporate life, attending conferences, traveling a lot. I started traveling a lot, and always leaving the children. And by the time I got divorced, because I only lasted 5 years, with all the traveling and all the, and it's just, I completed the cycle with this particular person, and I didn't feel that there was anything else, also. And when things started getting a bit hectic, in terms of we're not understanding each other, then I walked out with the children, with both children. I had the second child by that time. I walked out. Because I could also, because I earned enough. I had support from my family and my friends. And I worked for a company that was just encouraging and inspiring, I worked 27 years for this multinational, same company, that I made my career out of it, and became a director of human resources, and sat on the boards, and all that. But that saw the talents, recognized the skills, and that I felt I could express myself freely, and that was my preparation and foundation for later on. So I did that for 27 years. Long time. So then divorce, but everything was smoothly. It wasn't like a difficult divorce or no. So we just separated, divorced. Things didn't work out. They were hectic, but I felt that one door closed, another door opened of a new life. Where I was stepping really into a corporate world where I needed to be more free. So that was good. So during about 10 years, 10 years, I was like alone, free, bringing up the children, but working for a corporate company that allowed me to go on holidays with the children, paid for the holidays, paid for the medical aid, paid for everything. I had the benefits to support my growth. And that time was lonely sometimes, but was a blessing, because it was a time of incubating a whole lot of new stuff that was coming in. Because at that time I started already channeling, information, automatic writing first, connecting with my team, of Sun Elders, and receiving guidelines, what's the next steps would be, Yeah. So then I married again, and was married for 11 years. This one was more than a 5, it was like 11 years. During my corporate life, was with someone that allowed me the freedom to travel all over the world, to go and explore my hobbies, to go and learn the indigenous cultures, who never stopped me, even if it meant that I would be home just 4 months a year, Beautiful being, really gentle, but not on the same spiritual path, not with the same curiosity, not with the same connection, and not wanting to be there, to go there. Not at all. So we grew apart. There was just no space. There was no space for active inspirational conversation. That we were at crossed, we had our wires crossed, in our conversation. So there was a loneliness that sank in, that was bigger than being alone on trips, all over the world, So when I would return, I would be like extreme, like the loneliness was like unbearable. So I knew the next step was to leave. Even though there was this nurturing situation, there was an encouragement on the one hand, but on the other one, an unwillingness to not an unwillingness, a choosing. It was a personal choice not to engage in spiritual life, not even curiosity, and just be very concerned about the material well-being, and that was not enough. So I left everything. I left my house, my furniture, my crystals, and with my backpack. My children were already, at university, and my son was already in the US, in the States. My daughter was already in England, trying, after university. It was like there was no reason for me to be in a situation that I didn't want to, and that gave me the choice also to complete my corporate life, because that was also in the pipeline for 5 years that I had to leave, because my body was getting sick. The signs were there, and I kept on postponing it because the money was good. It allowed me to travel and to do what I wanted. But it became very bad. The challenges with the physical body became unbearable. And so I had to make a choice. And so the choice was sell the companies. At that time, I'd already left the corporate, opened companies, sold company, sell the companies and go on a walkabout and leave everything behind. And that's what happened. And that was really the big awakening. I would say 2008, 2009, so about 46 years old, more or less. But when I wrote my book, I was 44. So I started writing and putting it together, but I only really launched it. And I knew that I had to do that because that was a history that was going to be wiped out. It was not going to be in remembrance. Only snippets will be in remembrance. The highlights, or the learning points, so that I could share with others, but not anything else. It was wiping a hard disk out. And once that was launched, until 2011, 2012, then everything started expanding, and even my walkabouts, which I had already done before, were of different nature, because there was this freedom of expression. There was this realization of the mission, that I'm not here to make a lot of money and to spend a lot of money. I'm here to share my wisdom, because now I received a lot of gifts as a result of that too. The gift of voice. I had no voice to sing, and I remember when I was a child, I wanted to be in the choir, but I was terrible. So I was kicked out. But the voice, I became a voice alchemist, and the languages of light from different planets, nature spirits, Pachamama came. And it all came very quickly in a period of 2 years. I was guided by this invisible guide, that I thought he was a physical presence, but he wasn't. From a Tibetan lineage, and that he was physically in a monastery. But then I realized that was a story that I'd constructed, because he actually never told me that he had, but I needed to locate him somewhere. For 2 months I located him in KwaZulu-Natal in a monastery, which he had mentioned, having implanted that seed so that it would make me more comfortable that I was being guided by some physical presence, which was not. So I had all these baths, all these rituals, 4 times a week with rose. So that the symbol of the rose was I was explaining this to someone else this week, was very significant, because it was rose water that I had to do the rituals yet, and I had to put it in the baths that I had to do the ritual with. I had to pour rose essence, and I had to do the ritual of the rose. So, and the reason I was explaining it recently is because they're doing diets of the rose. Quite a lot here and someone was sharing with me this diet of the rose and the rose petals in the bath, and I said, that's exactly what I did, not knowing that I was doing a diet of the rose, that I was drinking rose water, because I was following the guidance of this of this higher learning guide that was helping me to purify my vessel and prepare for the work that I had to deliver to the planet later on. And this went on for 2 years. The baths, the candles, the voice, breathing underwater, sounding underwater, but with the rose water, outside. And then everything came during those years. The languages, the sound, the teachings, the methodologies, the healing rituals, everything came through. And then when it was complete, I remember that day that we finished with the rituals, and Zeus, that was his name, which is also a mythological figure, he said, daughter, my daughter, he told me like this, my daughter, you are now ready to walk the earth, because it was all very mythological in the way it was spoken, to walk the earth. I will send you a graduation gift, not that you need anything, because you need to understand you don't need anything, because you're just this beacon, and you're not even a person. And in the post, a month later, I got a ring, which I still have today, with 7 leaves, so it's a silver ring with 7 leaves and a diamond in each of the leaves. And he said, wear the ring. The first activate the ring, one sundown, one night. Activate it first. Place the ring in your finger. When you lose it, if you lose it, okay, then it's no longer needed for you. Or should you not lose it, he said, and should you choose to keep it, one day you will give it away. I still have the ring. But there is one thing about the ring, because this is 7 initiations. That's why it's 7 leaves, because I went through the 7 initiations. The diamond is missing on the 7th initiation. So the 7th initiation is when you are completely transmuting the body and you are engaging with the world you're visiting. You're visiting the planet, you're assisting, but you are mostly an etheric being, and you're working and you are able to remain in this plan in body for short periods of time, and so you're working, assisting others. You're like a guide, assisting others to push through expansion and amplification in this planet. So I'm not yet there. That's why the diamond is missing.
So kind of going back, so you said around 44 or so, you kind of gave up your household life and went on this, as you said, walkabout. Before that happened, in all of these years where you're raising children, you have a husband, a corporate job, there must have been something that you felt, because you said also you knew that something was coming after
Yes.
that this was a phase of your life that you knew needed to be complete, which I think is also very beautiful, because it seems like also so much of human suffering is resistance to what is, and not accepting, not maybe fulfilling certain obligations. And so it seemed like you had the sense you knew, but I would also imagine, because you also said there was already things in your life like channeling or guides. So what was that? How did that begin to happen? I mean, you're a child, you moved to South Africa. Like at what point do you start to sense that something else is going on that's maybe not, even as you said for your second husband, that's not maybe in the vocabulary or in the worldview of other people, that you realize something else is going on?
From a very early age, when I was 6, that's when I realized already that I was with a particular episode that happened, where a guide appeared in the threshold of my door in my room, and there was all this electricity and magnetic energy going on, and I was sort of paralyzed, but went to the guide who had a key, a golden key. He had a golden key which looked like a ring, and he came to deliver this because I was ready to receive it. And I remember I was completely in I wouldn't say panic, but I was in fear, walking towards this energy, and then I fell on the floor, without oxygen, and my mother found me, and I was in the clinic for 3 days with oxygen. During those 3 days, that's when everything happened. The team came through. I understood I was part of the team, these golden beings, these little llamas, there were a mixture of them. And they were all around the bed. I was outside the body looking in. I was part of the team. And there was a recalibration that took place in the body. There were stuff coming out, and there was stuff being put in certain organs, So there were some devices, we can call it devices or implants, that were placed, that's where also I agreed to be a study case, so I agreed with my team, which they reminded me that I agreed before incarnation, to come and be an experiment that they could learn from on the other side, in my star planet, which originally was the Pleiadians. and then the Venusians and the Arcturians came through in 2009 when I had finished my transition. So they reminded me that we made this agreement, and therefore there was this learning. I was here to learn, but I was to send the information to my home planet. So I had a particular device that did that automatically. I didn't have to do that myself. And that device was in this area, placed in this area, more or less. Yeah, a chip, let's call it, that had maintained contact with my family, with my star family. And I could send my experiences without sending them deliberately, because automatically I was being monitored. Yeah, and that they would be supporting my growth, and that I was coming here for a bigger purpose than just... And that was what was the message then. It wasn't like all the details of the mission. No. It was like, you are here for a bigger purpose. You are part of our team. We are overlighting you, and we will look after you. And you will receive lots of gifts as you go along. Gifts and talents. And we'll make some things very easy for you too. Which happened because I came through so many challenging situations that were so easily sorted out, that I came to realize that I was being looked after, I felt the presence of my team on a daily basis. I started making drawings when I was very young of codes, and I didn't know it was codes, and my mother, she kept some of the drawings, so, and it was like a few years ago, she said, you were already writing your light codes when you were 7 years old. I was reading books about UFOs, learning about all the ancient history, of all the civilizations in the big changes in the world, and I was very young. So I was being assisted. I had this and I could read the thoughts after that experience. There were many things that changed. I was able to read the thoughts of people, quite easily. I was able to grasp information very fast, very, very fast. I was also able to balance my body, my emotional body, extremely quickly, almost to the point of not feeling human sometimes. And I was also able to feel that this was all a game. That we were part of this experience. We were just playing roles, and we were part of this mismatch, the soup of consciousness. I called it later on, the soup of consciousness, and there was actually no separation. The separation was created to learn duality and to learn polarity. And I started writing, very young, 10. I started writing poems. So it was through the poems that I was bringing in the information. And I started writing poems about archetypes, mystical archetypes, Poseidon, Adonis, and, I went through ancient Greece and then Egypt. And then I started writing just information, automatic writing. And I know, and that was with the death of my cousin in Mozambique. She was also my closest friend, and she died in an accident, and she was pregnant with a baby. It was quite a shock to my system. I stepped in, and at that time, and organized everything for the family, because there were the parents were much older, were on their 60s, 70s, and someone needed to go and identify the body. Someone needed to organize things. Someone needed to do the eulogy. And I just went on automatic. It was like an automatic situation, no grieving, all right. But then I grieved afterwards, and she came through. So she came through, and she said to me, it's time soon. It's time soon for you to leave the corporate life, because you're not going to make it. Body-wise, you're not going to make it. And on that day, I wrote 7 pages of automatic writing, but fast, 3 minutes, 4 minutes. And that's when the gates opened. So the gates opened. So this death was a gift. Again, another gift. The realization that, yes, it was a gift because it opened a gateway to my worlds, so that I could receive these messages and I could share it with the world. And then it was very short period of automatic writing, maybe 5 months of it. And then I started bringing in information. So if you would ask me a question, I would bring in information, and realizing, I don't know where this information is coming from, it's from my team. I was happy it was from my team, or it's from source. And I started doing my healing sessions straight away as a hobby, so that my energy could be replenished and my body could start resetting. And then I chose to leave the corporate life. Yeah.
I think for a lot of people, this sounds very strange.
Mm-hmm.
But you mentioned a few things which I think are really interesting. Even as children, I think most people accept a certain reality that if a child is talking to someone, for example, who's not physically there, we don't think that that's so strange, but we may label it something like imagination, or we dream every night, often fantastical things, but we just label it a dream. Or as you said, maybe we take certain plants or medicines that put us into a very, what we would call altered state of consciousness, where there is a certain communion or a certain knowledge that people would say is coming from God, from source, from other beings, from other entities. Even in a lot of modern physics, there's a lot of these ideas that we live in a certain dimension, but there are potentially 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 other dimensions that we don't normally live in. So it seems like there's kind of this strange, especially in a modern world, I don't know if disconnect is the right word, but maybe.
It is.
But even as you were mentioning, a lot of these indigenous cultures, like when you talk about a walkabout, there was a reason that those people were doing that, or there's a reason that the Shipibo or the Tubu in Colombia speak about star beings, that there are other beings that live in different stars, or that even, for example, taking a plant medicine is so that one can remember who they are and where they came from, and these ideas of transcending time and space and dimensionality. And as you mentioned, even these cultures that probably a lot of the people listening from this podcast, maybe from a more European or background, that even the roots of that, based in Greek mythology, that there are these very elaborate stories which, are probably even predated by Egyptian technology, which, is this ancient technology, which we don't really understand why people created these enormous megalithic structures, or here in Peru, and all of this mythology. But even in that way of framing it, we say it's myth, again, as if it's something that's other than real. So I guess this is a two-part question. From your experience, what made you, I guess, believe what you were receiving, and not just label it as something like an imagination or a dream, or figments of something? And then also, where do you think this disconnect, again, maybe for lack of a better word, comes from, to where for most of human history it seemed like this was a very predominant part of people's lives, of people's cultures? Even here in Peru, you don't just create megalithic structures for no reason.
No.
So, but where did this split begin to happen from?
With me, just answering the first question, it's since that first episodes when I was 6 years old, and I saw, I physically, it was for me a validation. My team was there. I was part of that team, but I was also human. My connection with the divine, which I called with the divine, was with me, and with the imagination. I never thought imagination was something that it was fantasy. Imagination is an extension of your universe that you are tapping in, and where all potentials and possibilities exist, and it's part of all of us. I've never seen that as separate from myself. So I lived in this world that was complemented, that had this complement, of the myths, of the, and I understood very, very, also very young, I understood that they were just archetypes. They were just examples of the different roles and the different potentials and possibilities that we have as human nature, to tap into and collect skills and collect talents, and they serve that as purpose, as a purpose. The tapping into the world of Mother Earth, and connecting with the flowers, connecting with the nature spirits, connecting was a natural incident for me was a natural occurrence, because everything was part of the whole. There was no separation in the field, or perception of separation. Therefore, if met with separation initially, there was always I remember the first time that I met with a drastic situation, or a trauma, or it was a shock to my system, because there was no separation in my world, inside or outside, how I projected it. But when it came from the outside, projected at me, I didn't understand it. It was like, oh, how does this work? And it was from very young, of course, because the system was not encouraging of imagination and fantasy and the world that I lived in, So the birth of separation was a program that, and understood as a program that was running already in the school system, in the culture, inherited in my parents' education and upbringing, mother, father, ancestral lineage, that was understood, that was birthed, in our planet from the inception. So that, and how it was explained to me, it was different, so that source could get to know itself, to the fullest potential of itself. And therefore, we all were parts of that fragmentation. We fragmented ourselves from our wholeness when we incarnated, so that we, in many pieces, and only one piece was in this body, but other pieces were somewhere else, having other experience, so we could maximize the learning of this experience and this unity. But the fragmentation was absolutely necessary for us to learn how to come back to wholeness and unity within ourselves, and also how to assist source itself, the creator, to know itself, so that we could know ourselves, because we're part of the same. And so that's how I understood it. So when the first incidents were a bit of a shock to my system, to perceive that this was not my perception, this was not where I was, and there was a feeling of alienation from that. But the minute the program was understood and the game was understood, then I needed to adapt and adjust to the game. That's why I had to live all the experiences. I had to learn how to be human. I had to have children. I had to have normal life, marriages. I had to work in normal environments, in corporate environments. I had to fall into the system. I had to be able to also express my voice when the system wasn't working. So I had to have, because that's what we've signed up for. As humans, we signed up to learn more and more about ourselves. And if we didn't experience the pain, if we didn't experience the shock, if we didn't have all this realm of experiences in the physical, we wouldn't be able to accrete more light, because there was, no space for it, So you have to, I understood that I had to experience, I had to feel the pain, I had to heal the pain, so that I would give space for the transformation to take place, because it was through the feeling through the fragmentation and through the separation that we see in our world. It's through the separation that the channel opens for transformation and unity to come. It was like, so the birth of separation was designed, to answer the second question, was designed by all of us, upon our own incarnations. It was designed by Source itself, that we separate ourselves from the connection with the divine in all worlds and in all realms of experience, so that we could then come back to that transformation, that healing, and that unity within ourselves and within the planet one day. And that's how I see it.
You spoke a few times about this idea of your allies, your helpers, these solar helpers or these star beings. How would you describe that to someone? This idea of a star being, how is that different, or I mean, how is that different from another person, for example? How do you understand these realities? Like, where is that coming from? Where is that energy or that person, or where are they existing in time and space? How is that being transmuted through you? Is that a physical entity? Is it energetic? Is it something? Is it knowledge? Is it coming from the past? Is it coming from the present? Like, how would you describe what's happening for you when you experience
It's
that?
coming from a place of no time and no space. It's coming from a place, from a stream of consciousness. So it's like you are, there's a transfer of energy. So it's energy. So it's a body of consciousness that's energetic in its nature, and that exists in different planetary bodies, and that you visit, because I used to go to the planets. So from the age of 12, 13, I started astral traveling, so actually leaving my body and going during the night to attend these higher learning universities, or just to connect with the groups of beings that were my family, were part of my family. First in the Pleiadians, then in Venus, then in Arcturus. And then attending council meetings also in Sirius, So during until the age of about 27 to 30, this was a normal occurrence, going, attending, collecting the polls, coming back in. And how the transfer of information was taking place was telepathically to me in the body. So if I wasn't there collecting the information, or seeing or experiencing with them, or working with them on certain projects that were interplanetary, that had nothing to do with the work here at this planet, I would be receiving telepathic messages also at certain stages of my life, which gave me guidance to the next step. So it was a telepathic transfer. There was usually electricity and electrical magnetic impulse that would happen around me, where the field was like a gate was open, and then the information would come in, the thoughts would be integrated, and then I would either write it down or design it, or do a drawing. Or later on, then I started using my tape recorder and doing the audios. But when I was young, no, it was just guidance, and especially at big transitions in my life. Like I remember when I fell pregnant, and at that stage it was like, wow, single mother at university doing a master's, it was like 78 or something like that, 79. and it was like a no, there was like this, you don't do something like that, you are ostracized, you are discriminated, everybody's booing, everybody's talking behind your back, everybody's, I remember when I got the news and I felt the relief. First reaction was relief, because I knew it was a gift. And how did I know it was a gift? Because I felt the transfer of, I was my team. I felt them around me. And the message was, this is a gift. So I repeated, this is a gift, to myself several times before sinking in, And I needed to step in and embrace this gift, and don't even hesitate. Just embrace it. Don't think twice, don't hesitate. All your plans will change. Diplomatic career, this and that, everything will change, but it's a gift of expansion. This is a miracle child that's coming. And this is going to heal so many parts of you that are in need of purification and clearing. So I got this transfer. It was like I was, it's telepathic. You have tingling in your body. You receive the information, and you know what to do next. And no matter how much encouragement I got to give up this child, it wouldn't work because I so was embracing this gift that I had been given, and I was guided. I was guided all along. I was guided when I walked out of my first marriage. I was guided when I walked out of my last marriage. I was guided when I changed direction. There were so many incidents of communication. So you receive the information, you feel it in your body, you feel it in your heart, and you know what to do next. And you follow your intuition. You do not question. You trust. There was a lot of trusting and no doubting, taking place. Especially those early days, lots of trusting and lots of doubting. And this is how the communication works. Still today, yesterday I had quite an episode, I went to Cusco and I was doing my errands and admin and all that stuff, forgot about what it was, full moon or not, I forgot about it. And I got home. And I didn't want to eat anything. In fact, during the day, I noticed, because you notice, you're in touch, you need to be connected with your body, because it's your body that's giving you the signals. I noticed that I couldn't eat anything, that I could only drink stuff. So, I had my liquids. And then I go outside, and I was sitting outside in my veranda, and, I saw the moon coming up, and it had a double rainbow around it, and golden inside. So there was the moon and golden. And I said, well, that's interesting. The other day, 2 days ago, I was swimming in the pool, and I lay down on the grass, and the double rainbow was on top of me, and I received communication, something was coming. And I need to pay attention. I need to pay really focus, So this must be it. So I sat there, and I was told, go and get your phone. Because I have a magic camera in my phone that catches energies that, men and the people don't catch. So not that I have a magic camera, but there is. So I took photos, and I asked them. Then I was asked to fractalize the photos, mirror them, mirror some of the photos. And a whole message came through from the elemental kingdom, the dragon kingdom, the rebirth of power in a different way there. Then I had another set of where the sky became indigo, like Bordeaux color, and only the moon appeared, and I've got all that in my, and it was the birth of passion and the new energy that was coming through, and the the seats of leadership that needs to be taken by the pioneers of light that have committed to that before incarnation, many, and it's starting now, Then I had another set of the Andes, so the whole stretch of the Andes with lots of gold technology inside, lots of gold, and also lots of people. So lots of beings appeared in my photos, small little beings. My lamas, the group of lamas that are very small, that are with me for a long time, they appeared on my photos, and this energy of the Andes and the how the Andes is so important for the reset of consciousness in the world, and it's going to be a pivotal part and one of the pivotal points of consciousness. The breaking down of the corruption and greed, and the emergence of natural resources that are preserved. It was a whole thing. So then I'm still outside. So doing all this, then I was told, okay, time to go inside. Because it's like you are moving, you are in the energy, so it talks to you, telepathic. It's all telepathic. And I sat in my lounge and I looked at my curtains, and I have a solar disc with glyphs that I drew that are hanging, which represent the Sacred Worlds game that I'm about to launch. And from the disc, there was a wave like this, a white wave on the curtain. You could see the shadows, you could see the wave, you could see the design of the frequency. And I had to sit there in front and just... So at that time, when things like that happen, what is the revelation that I am about to receive? I'm open. You say, I'm open to receive. I'm open to be assisted. I'm willing to be assisted. I am assisted to decipher and discern what this energy is and what does it mean. And why is it today here and any other day that I sit in the sofa? I've never seen it. And it's coming from the disc. So what is the glyphs telling me? What is the frequency? And sometimes nothing comes out, like yesterday. I had already received all that information. So I was just told, just stand with your palms up. So I put my palms up and receive. That was it. So I still don't know. But you follow, because you are in guidance to the divine presence that's speaking through you. You are in that divine presence and you trust it. So you receive it. And I know that in a couple of days, it will make sense to me. At the moment, I know it's a frequency wave. I know it's got a chant and a sound because I heard it when I went to bed, the sound of it. I know it's from the disc and it's from the glyphs, the Elvic, because it's an Elvic disc from the Elvic kingdom, from the elves. That's all I know. But I'm in trust. But so you follow the signs. It's the visual, it's frequency in the body, a tingling. With me is very, very cold hands. When I start with suddenly my body, like yesterday when I got home, I was frozen. My hands were frozen and my feet were frozen. And I said, okay, something's going to happen. Go outside. And that's how it all started. but it's you moved, and you know that this energy is coming from source, so there's no hierarchy. You know, in the beginning I had a lot of connections with the Pleiadians, with the Venusians, because I had to go to in planet and learn quite a lot of things, and even with the Arcturians and the Syrians with cell regeneration. I worked a lot with cell regeneration in projects off planet, not within this planet. But that was in preparation for my body to be here longer also. You know, it was needed for me to do that. But then they all went. They all left. And I remember the day that they left, that all my star contacts, let's call it this way, you know, except for my consciousness, golden ones, which I call them, because I feel them around me, but I mean, I don't see them anymore, you know, because they are inside now. They're no longer outside myself. The day that it was 2017 that they all went, I was miserable. I thought, this is it, I've lost it. I've lost my contact with the divine, because I can't connect with any of them. And I was given immediately a transfer of information. You know, it's like a telepathing. You feel there's a tingling, there's a pulse. It's like if someone is walking inside you and it's not walking inside. And this light and said, everything is inside you now. And that was it, nothing else. And I was so used from so young to connect with this one, with Solaris, to Cederos, to you know, I had names for them too. You know, and they're gone. It took me months to adjust to that one. Because although I trusted that everything, there was part of me that did not. You know, until I then had validation with things that happened in my life, and that I went in to check in on with my higher self and my divine presence, and I was given the guidance. But initially, I thought, this is it. I'm disconnected like everybody else is disconnected. But it wasn't, you know, and everybody else is not disconnected either, because they are connected. You don't need to connect with star beings. You don't need to connect with nature spirits. You don't need to connect even with Pachamama. What you need is to connect with your higher presence and your divine presence. And you don't need all these hierarchies, you know. They've assisted me to learn quantum technology, to share experiences from other worlds, so that I can then share it through my work here. But not everybody is here to do that. You know, lots of people are here just to be connected with their divine presence and just engage from the heart and from the purity of the heart. The most wonderful human beings that I know walking throughout the world that I've met are not those that are connected with star beings or nature spirits or fairies. They are those that are connected with themselves fully, with that divine presence. And they do actions in the world. Not talk about, but do it, you know. So I had to learn that too. So it was like, okay, now this is it. I'm here.
Where do you think that trust or that faith came from? Because my sense is probably there's a lot of people who may begin to touch on some of those things you spoke of, whether it's it could be in that hypnagogic space before they're going to bed, where it's a huge transition, which
It
again, I
is.
think we just gloss over.
Mhm.
But for all intents and purposes, you're dying. You're letting go of this world, of who you are, and entering a very different space. And yet, sometimes in these spaces, I think people can experience this fear or this going into another dimension. It could be, as you said, just something that comes on, or in the presence of something truly great or horrifying. Also, in plant medicines, it's another thing that often comes up. But it seems like one of the things that really holds people back is this sense of fear, of really letting go, of allowing everything we think that we know to be real to be willing to let that go, to let that die. And I would imagine with a lot of these experiences, that took a tremendous amount of courage or trust or faith to be able to continue to go into these things. I mean, even in a lot of these indigenous cultures, again, they talk about these ideas of transcending the 12 dimensions of time and space, but they would also say these things like you have to be very careful because maybe you could get lost there, maybe you're not ready to go there. And I think a lot of that comes from that actually lack of faith, or maybe not even a lack of, but just it hasn't been embodied yet. So
No, it hasn't been
one
embodied.
isn't prepared for it.
Yeah, I think, and I have been, connected to many indigenous cultures, and I certainly feel that there's a lot of fear with that. You know, in the narration, of that space, of that 12-dimensional space, that is a space that you can get lost. So that is a disempowering that is a disempowering message. There is awareness that needs that, and a message of awareness is different than a fearful message. That you are that if you are in a suspended state of consciousness, not grounded in the body. Because one of the things that I've learned when everything was inside me was that I was for the first time grounded in my body, which I was not before. That I had my cords in the core of the planet, and that I was in progress to embodiment of the energies of the stars, of other worlds, other universes, other galaxies, and all those aspects and versions of the self into the body. And that was that was the gift. That's what we came to learn, is to bring those into the body, embody them, and ground them onto the earth, and extend those cords to the earth with all those aspects. That embodiment practice is not encouraged, it's not practiced with the same extent in indigenous practices, than the ascended practice. So this is what I found, and I'm generalizing, because in Africa, for example, the Zulus and the Sothos, they have a full embodiment practice. Let's embody our serious composition into the body, and there's fire rituals, and there's a lot of shamanic rituals with the Keros, for example, here in Peru, to embody the energy. But generally, it's the importance has been for everyone that is discovering other worlds and is on the path to awaken, or is already awakened and is on the path to understand how this thing works. There's little emphasis on the descension of the energy, bringing in those higher versions of yourself into the body, and going through the degrees of initiation. which is the fire, the water, the earth, the air, and the ether. And then you have two other degrees, which are the clear old audiences and clear sentient, and the connection with the divine, and then the transmutation of the body, while in physical form. So 7 degrees of initiation. That is not in a lot of disciplines, of spiritual disciplines, it is not the main thrust of it, which helps you with the embodiment. And for me, that's what really did it, because after everything disappeared, and all those versions were inside, so to speak, inside myself, then I needed to feel they were inside myself. I needed to ground them. So I needed to rehash the initiations that I received from my Tibetan so-called monk, Zeus, the energy, opened the field for me to feel the energy and to get to know my versions. But those initiations had to be revisited in a different way by walking the earth and do shamanic practices. So a fire ritual, working with the wind, working with the water, working with ether, working with sound and resonance, so making chanting mantras helped me a lot to embody the energy, to put sound in the practice of meditation, to walk in meditation, or to dance in meditation. That was a huge key for me to embodiment, to embody all those versions into the body. And of course, you set the intention, because you've got to set the intention to bring those versions into the body, and to earth them in your physical body and in the body of the planet, before you do a practice, because you're calling. It's your intention that is an automatic manifestation that can create that. And so I found that sound, that dance, that rituals, all sacred ceremonies, So that's when I went to the shamanic. I said, the connection to the earth is important for the work ahead that needs to be done. And the actions that are going to be delivered in my future assignments and the ones with others. I can't do it if I'm not in the body fully, And so all these rituals with, inside water, transforming the energy of the water inside your body, by taking in structured water or water that is of high frequency, or putting a crystal in your water so you purify, because it's not enough that they tell you it's organic or it's structured. You activate it with a sound. So you are using high frequency tools with the energy that your ascended energy, in order to then ground that in the body, and then you drink it, because it needs to go into the body. Swimming in water also, and practices in water, just like I went through those baths, A lot of my teachings is to do with that, because it worked to clear, to purify, but also to bring in the energy of the frequency that I was in alignment outside, perceived to be outside, was actually inside the cell structure of the body. Working with the skeleton structure and perceiving that your skeleton is not just a bunch of bones, that's the interface to the steel, the crystal stargate. You interface with all realms of existence, past, present, future. through your bone structure. That's where you have the key, the memory. The memory actually is crystallized in the bone structure. That's why, trauma is very difficult to be released from the bone structure. That's the last place that the trauma locates itself. You might have healed, you might have done, all sorts of healings, but if you do not, transform the trauma from the bone structure, you will still have those flashes, and those triggers. The charges will still be there. So you need to clear it from the bone structure, because the bone structure is your interface as a grid of light. So that's so taking care of that consciously. So I am conscious that I'm clearing that, and that now I'm going to do a fire ceremony in order to set my manifestation to do that, because I need to anchor it in the planet. Or I'm going to swim in this water to do that. Or I'm going to put my feet inside the sand, or the whole body inside the sand, in order to ground my energy and the aspects of myself that are in high frequency, and that I understood that they are, but that I am unable to put actions to it. I can talk about it, I can do podcasts, I can share it with the whole world, but I cannot action a project to completion because I am not grounded, or because it's not your assignment in some cases, but in most cases it's because of the grounding that hasn't taken place. The acceptance that to be here, we need to be with our feet on the ground, that we need to embody and own what we have, and that we, by working with the elements of nature, we have a key. And that was one of the secrets for me, was the discovery that the elements of nature are one of the main keys of embodiment, because it's not about the fire. No, the liver is your fire. Your elements of nature are inside the body. So that's where you start. And again, for me, the guidance when I was going through this process, everything is inside you, was the Tibetan wisdom. Because the Tibetan lineage has a lot of wisdom that can assist us with the embodiment process of the high frequencies into the body and into this planet. And there's a soul retrieval methodology, for example, that they have, when you give your power away through time, and you fragment yourself, whether you are conscious or unconscious, everybody has a great deal of fragmentation. And there's sometimes the embodiment or the integration can't take place because of that. So you need to go and collect all your fragments that of either power you've given away, permission slips that you've given, advertently because you were not in awareness, or you are not loving to be in this planet, for example. You wanted to go home somewhere else because you were disassociated and disconnected, which is the mass consciousness is the collection of the elements, but it starts inside. So let's start sounding the organs so that they can be in balance with each other. So when you work with the elements, so the fire is your liver, then the water is your water is your kidneys, the air is your lungs. So you're working with the different types of the body, and you are activating a battery of sounds, all right, or mantras. There's Tibetan mantras to activate that. And you do this over a period of 11 days, and some people do it 33 days, every single day. You say these mantras in order to balance everything. So it's a discipline. And I had to go through that discipline. I had to do the embodiment. It clears, purifies, and activates balance. So there's space between the organs. When the organs are all squashed up, there's no space for anything, for new light to come in, new information to come in, to be discerned, to be decoded, nothing. But once you activate the functionality of the meridians change, and so does the functionality of the organs change, then you have space. You have space within the cell structure also to receive new light and to understand what you're receiving. But you are grounded, because you're doing this grounded in the body. You're doing this with your body first. And then you're working with the elements. You do your fire rituals, your water rituals, you play with the wind, and you can make the wind, move trees, and you can make the fire, big or small, you learn how to do that. And that was afterwards. But the first step is to do it with your body first. Once you feel, okay, I've got this, I'm much more clear, I have collected all these fragments of myself, and I have released those that I don't want, also, because it's not for my eyes good, or for this particular phase of my life, When you feel that you're complete, then you work with the elements of nature. Or you can do it simultaneously, like I did it simultaneously. And going to locations. So that's when I started with my walkabout of really going to sacred sites, which I've always done it all my life, but I did it in a different way, because I started doing rituals and ceremonies in the sites themselves to ground the energy in the body. Whether before I would go there to open the portal, fix a ley line, or open or close a portal that was artificial, but I wasn't really working with the body. I was on a mandate, basically. This was a interplanetary mission. I needed to work with Mother Earth. So I was working with the collective consciousness, but I was separate from the collective consciousness. Thinking that I wasn't. I thought I was one with the collective consciousness. But I wasn't, because I was always in guidance by my Pleiadians or my Syrians, and I was, although all those were me, I didn't have that integrated and embodied. So, the water you drink, the practices you do, the moving the body was another knowledge for me, that I really needed to move the body all the time. Because when the body doesn't move, and we all have our preferences in moving the body. Some of them is yoga. For me, it's too slow. For the energy level that I have, I prefer to swim, or I prefer to hike big hills, and even kickboxing is fantastic, for me. I really liked Tai Chi. Thought a bit slow, but But it helped me to center myself. So the combination of a practice like that for me, and not yoga. Yoga is not for me, you know. So you trial and error, you know, you choose, but you're consciously bringing all these things because you are embodying the energy. And also, you need to get back into a regular setup. Like many of us isolated themselves, and I'm one that did that. During many years, I would only be connected to spiritual communities. I would only connect with my family members because they understood me. And I would connect with spiritual communities all over the world. But I wouldn't go in any setup that had mass consciousness, you know, that were not within the same frequency that I was. So I was separating myself from myself in doing that. And I only understood when I started embodying that was what I was doing. I needed to get back in. So I needed to make sure I go to a coffee shop full of people, that I go in dancing to a club, you know, full of people, that I go into, you know, regular places, you know, that have regular people, that have people, that because once you are, your frequency is stable and centered, you can be anywhere. And you are able to sustain it. You're also able to transmute anything that is not, that you pick up, because as you walk into the room, you pick up. You might pick up straight away, wow, okay, something needs to be cleared. You clear, all right, and there you are. But it's so important that all of us that have worked in ourselves for a long time, that are doing psychedelic journeys, that are embodying aspects of the self, or collapsing, that get back to normal life, to living. Because what I realized is I was not living. I was only living in a gated community. So what's the contribution to the world? If you're just online, not face to face, you're online because you're hiding behind the camera, all right? And you are not in contact, what contribution can you make? Is that what you're here to do? And of course the answer was no. So the last 7 years have been challenging, you know, because it was about the embodiment, you know, and the embodiment had many lessons and many gifts. I wouldn't even call them lessons, but experiences that were not tapped in, and visions of the big picture. You know, I was missing the big picture, you know. If you've come here, and we've come, so many of us are here to lead the way. And the message from yesterday was very clear about the leading, that we need to step into that. But it's not by hiding ourselves in communities and gated communities and, you know, doing, you know, just attending curtain and attending this and just doing ceremonies or doing journeys. We need to get back into normal life. And sometimes you need to get back into normal jobs so that you can make a difference. Because you are, it's a frequency that comes in. You know, for me it was very challenging to put together, you know, the Sacred Walls game. You know, so I had to stop all my activities of light. You know. But I understood that this was my first activity where I was going to be face to face. I was going to be face to face from now on with no mass consciousness. I had to launch the board game, work with advertising agencies, work with distributions, work with production companies. I had to get back into normal life. But now I was ready to do it, because if this had been done 7 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to do it. So there's a preparation, which I call the insertion or the descension, that needs to take place. Practices to do with that. And then I am open to walk the earth wherever it takes me. If I have to go and do a speech for 200 people, I go and do that. And I don't have a problem whether the room is protected, where there is entities, or there is this, because that is just, nothing is going to happen to you. I mean, I never really had that problem before, but I would simply refuse to go to those spaces, because I wouldn't feel comfortable. And I even used, it's not in alignment with my frequency. So I birthed that separation. I was birthing a separation until I understood that, now everything is outside. That was connecting me to everything, to the planet, to this has gone. It's just me now. I've got this divine presence and I'm all this. I understand I'm this grid. But how does it work now? How do I have to? And for me, that's why we are here. We are here to do that. We are here to tap into those fields, in all those gifts, those potentials, bring it in, reset our body, because our body needs to reset, to calibrate, to regenerate, in order for us to then step into action. What's the next step? What's the next action? What am I going to do? What action or activity or experience that I'm going to share, bring about as a creator that I am, because I am a creator, to transform this planet. And that's why we're here. And I talked through experience, because that's this is where I am now. I'm now launching this game for children, Sacred Worlds game, which is a transformation game. It's a collaboration. It's a collaborative game. It's not about competition. It's about working with parents and children working together, teachers working with children, honoring their imagination and honoring their gifts and exchanging. It's a space where they get together and they're free to express who they are. And it's a self-discovery game. And it's one of the products. But then there's the oracle cards. Then there's the box. So it's all, like a friend of mine said, 3D stuff. But it's 3D stuff that needs to be placed here from a 5D frequency embodied being, or in progress, because we never arrive. I still have a way to do it. That's why that ring's still missing the diamond, But, yeah, it's the illusion that we think we've arrived when we tap into energies of other worlds, because we haven't. We've only arrived when everything is inside the body, and we actually manifesting actions that are giving concrete results in the world. And it could be through the spoken word also. My case is not. Spoken word has been, a path that I've taken for a long time, and with healing modalities and transformations and healings in many places, and now it's concrete actions of projects that need to be placed on earth.
Well, I think your spoken word is quite strong, because everything you just said very much resonated. You said this idea, which I think is really vital, and that it's this idea of listening to your intuition. Even in common language, I think some people would describe it as like listening to the gut or listening to the heart, maybe rather than listening to the mind. And I think that's something that so many people struggle with, whether it's from conditioning or doubts or fears. But I think so much of what could be described as that higher knowledge or deep knowledge, there's often a very deep intuitive sense of something like, this is what it is, this is correct, this is the way I need to walk. And yet doubts can come in, whether we question that, or fears, or other people. It's also something that's very common in plant work, and something that I think actually takes a high degree of skill to be able to differentiate something such as, this plant is telling me this, or this higher being is telling me this, versus maybe this is what I think I want, or my body is telling me I want this chocolate cake, but is that coming from a very deep place, or is that coming from something that's maybe still out of alignment? And even as you were saying, we're never fully there. We're always like life. It's a constant movement. It's a constant dance. So for you, where is there a sense of when you've really tapped into that intuition? Is there something that allows you to really know, like, this is truth, that this is my intuition, this is my guides, this is that there's no questioning, it's just this is what it is, versus maybe something that's coming from somewhere else?
Yeah. That has been always, it's been a practice that came from, already from, that guide that I said to Zeus, the filtering of and the discernment of information. It was during those 2 years, one of the toughest practices was that. And it was also one of the big challenges for me, was to be able to discern what was coming in, even with the languages, what was coming in was coming from the purity of the presence of the source energy, or was coming from somewhere else. And it's the first step of the practice, as I was learning how to do it, For initiates, the first step is to, as the message comes in, stepping out into the observer and saying, questioning, what is this message from a pure source? And saying, I am receiving, I am infinite and I'm loving, for example. Is this who speaks, and is this from a pure soul? Questioning. So that helped me a lot in the beginning, to step out and to question, because I was asked to do that, Question, no matter who it is, even if it's the purity of source, you need to filter, discern. And the only way to do it in the beginning is to question, where is it coming from? So you do like a test, and a validation. Test and validate. And the only validation is your body. This is what I found. You can ask the question. There is then a signal that is given to you, but it needs to be felt with the body. If the body is uncomfortable, if the body feels pain somewhere, if the heart is closed, if the mind shatters, continues to shatter, create stories, you know that is not a clear message. So you stop and you do not act and you go on a walkabout. So instead of making the decision straight away or receive the energy, you take yourself out and you go on to nature, you tune in to, you do a practice, could be a meditation, it could be a walkabout practice, it could be or you just go about doing your own thing that day, and you request that the information gets validated by yourself. And in the beginning, it wasn't that easy, to do that, because it was a long process, and I wanted everything quickly because the ego wanted, the ego wanted things to speed up. The ego wanted to feel that it was Jesus that was speaking, or that it was this person that was speaking, that was an ascended being. But then you get it right, because it's a practice. Every day it happens, you filter, you use your body as a barometer. That's your tool, Your body, you need to find out that your body tells you that if it's in pain, if it's in that it's in discomfort, it's immediate. But if so I never used a pendulum, and I could have used the pendulum because I wanted to do it with my body. So how I discern is through my heart. If this space is open, and if there is a pulse, a nice pulse, not a pulse like this, then I know that what I am receiving is from Source, and it's pure. If my body contracts, if I have my jaws are stiff, if I feel like a pain here, or a discomfort in my joints, because you need to start feeling those things also in the body, allowing it, then this is not clear. So I am not consenting. So because we can choose not to engage, I am not consenting. Neither am I paying attention to this energy, neither am I going to be doing any of what was suggested, because I do not trust that. Or I know. Then I started learning that I do not trust. That still implies that you might have a bit of trust. It's just a play in words, but I know that is not for my highest good and for the highest good of all. You always have to add that, because it's not about you, because you are not a single empire. You are part of the whole matrix, the whole grid system.
Do you find it can also be the same, because it's something I experience a lot, which is actually the negative of something, that when I hear something, and again, it's a bit of words or maybe pedantic, but
Yeah.
But when there's something that comes in that feels negative, and it's like every cell of my body contracts,
Yes.
and I often associate that if I really investigate it, to this idea of separation. It's something that's...
No, it is absolutely. Because when you stiffen up, you're limiting the field of light, of new light, a new transformation, of even added gifts to come in. So you are you're self-sabotaging yourself by separating yourself from that gifts that is right there for you to pick. It's exactly that. Mm-hmm. And the body tells you. The body tells you. But it sometimes, what I found that sometimes it's interesting also that especially when you are in a journey of great expansion. All right, this is another scenario. Great expansion. And you have crossed several thresholds that were challenges for you. Things like, oh, I would never be able to do that. Okay, and you've overcome that. Okay. Then you've got another one that's coming up. For me, first was writing the book, then it was, developing a game, in my corporate career throughout, even how quickly I moved. I always had this thing. I was not able to do it, first. But then daring myself to open to that. And it came from the body too. So the body would go into anxiety. Okay. And get stiff. But it wasn't the body that was getting stiff. And then I realized it was the mind that was instructing the body, because my mind was very active, active intelligence, active thoughts, active constructs, active stories. So the story would be created, That is quite a big challenge, a step. You are not going to be able to do it. So, of course, the body contracts. It wasn't the body. So I started paying attention that it wasn't my body, that the part of resistance inside me didn't come from the body. It came from the mind that was instructing the body. Because in big transformations, you also have that feeling. When you're going through big transformations and now you have to go into the United Nations and do a speech in 2 weeks' time, and you've never faced so many people and you have to go in there, your body gets stiff. Same signals as if you are discerning. You see? But it's not the body that gets, it's the mind that says, no, you're not going to be able to handle this. Or maybe you are going. The doubt that comes in is created by the stories that are narrated by the mind and by the collective consciousness. Because that's another thing that I noticed. Then I started working on my mind and the stillness of the mind, and it wasn't the mind. But I was still faced with that challenge. Where does it come from? Then I realized it comes from the collective consciousness. Okay, collective consciousness of the lists of do's and don'ts and what you can do, what you can't do, and what you're limited and what you're not limited. Sometimes it's so overwhelming that you need to discern also that. It was soul agreements, soul contracts is another thing, that you have a soul agreement to go and do that. But that soul agreement comes from where? So it's not your agreement because you've sorted out your agreements, you've cleared your agreements, and I've done quite a lot of work on agreements and contracts, dissolved it, purified, But I was still getting this. And it was a soul consciousness agreement of the collective in the planet that somehow was tapping into my field, and I was allowing it. Because you need to give permission slips for it to come in. Obviously, you are not discerning that. So then I started qualifying, when filtering. I would qualify the mind, soul agreements from the collective consciousness, from any agreements at intergalactically that we have made, before this incarnation, that might still have accord to this, or any parallel realities that we exist as a soul that is impacting on the consciousness of this body. So covered all avenues within this galaxy, within others, within this universe, so qualify, did the whole statement, did a lot of work with that. Because once the mind was in observer mode, and it still happens, so I'm talking presently, this is a modus operandi still. Once the mind is in observer mode and it's observing the observer, and it's not the mind because you are able to sort that out, and you still have the doubt, the perception of doubt, and it's coming from what stream, in what universe, in what galaxy, in what parallel reality, because there's another whole thing. There's another whole thing. But again, you can do that through the body. You feel, but you have to ask the questions, where does it come from? I know that I am this body, but I also know that parts of myself, are in other realities existing as I am existing in this body. So is this part of myself that's in another reality that is playing this role, that is impacting in this consciousness and putting this heavy doubt in my field? And what is it? Please reveal itself. And you leave it. You don't have to be paranoid about it. But by requesting the information, or setting the intention at least, it becomes practice. And then you are able to use your discernment and your filter, covering all realities of existence also. And also take into account the collective consciousness of the planet. That's very strong, and that is not affecting you because you are not giving permission for that, neither you're consenting that happens. But you need to be clear. And that is part of that embodiment practice that I'm talking about, And that is, I find that by hearing a lot of the psychedelic experiences and journeys, people that do it and then come back for a session, for example. At the moment, I'm not doing many sessions because I'm quite busy with the project. But when I used to do it, that a lot of that played in those ceremonies. And when the discussion, and when I asked the questions in the discussion, I really tapped in that a lot of the stuff that comes in, which they labeled as entities that has damaged my vessel, were actually loose ends. There were contracts and agreements that were not sorted out or even acknowledged to any point. They were coming from the collective consciousness of that particular group, that of members that were tied up to that collective consciousness that brought it in. They were coming to dream world, but through the unconscious and the unconscious mind of the group, and that were in parallel realities that they didn't even know existed. But that the facilitation of the facilitator wasn't aware of any of this. See, wasn't aware of. So a discussion with the facilitator was because it was like they don't, I've gone back to him or to her, but they don't understand. They say it's just my mind playing up. But the fact is, I can't move my leg. I have a pain in my heart and I can't eat. For example, So what now? Because it is not just the body. It's not just about our experiences. It's about wholeness that's happening. And so what I find with facilitators, which is important, and I've talked because I know many facilitators here, is that get yourself trained in the, as far as that field, that world. Those worlds are a reality. You need to get yourself sensitive to that, learn how to do it, learn how to tap in, do it yourself, take time, go on a diet, but don't tell me you're going on a diet of 11 days and you are going to do exactly the same that you did the last time. Go on a diet of introspections, an inner journey to understand what more is there, so that you can help better your, those that you take on a journey, because it's a very big responsibility,
Talking about that idea of something being more, and you mentioned when you were young, you became very interested in ancient culture and history, and also going back to this idea of star beings, and even being here in Peru, there are these megalithic structures which have this extremely high precision, and I think especially in this field, for example, of like archaeoastronomy, of
yes,
seeing in Egypt the amazing precision which these things were built, and through ideas of like precession, and seeing the astrological alignment, and very commonly aligned to these star systems like the Pleiades or Sirius. A lot in the mythology of a lot of indigenous cultures. What for you is the significance? You mentioned a few times this idea of these star beings, of this knowledge from Sirius or the Pleiades or the Arcturians, or speaking about ancient cultures. What is that knowledge? And also, how do you differentiate? I mean, what is the difference for you between knowledge coming from Sirius or knowledge coming from Pleiades? Why is that important? Because it seems very important for you, but also looking at indigenous culture throughout history, and indigenous culture is indigenous to everywhere. It's not isolated to certain parts of the earth. That was a huge part of their worldview. So it's maybe kind of a vague question, but what is that knowledge, and why is it so important? And also, why do you think it's described, for example, as Pleiadian knowledge or Syrian knowledge? Like, what is that differentiation for you?
For me, it has been quite an easy way to differentiate, because I've had the opportunity to actually visit the places, But if I didn't, let's say I was just receiving information from the one or from the other, the type of information and technology that they share is very different. The Pleiadians, they work with compassion, and they have qualities, specific qualities that are visible, that are tactable. They work with this infinite love. It's not even conditional or unconditional. So you feel this everlasting. It's like the Venusians when they come in, when the technology sets in, when you receive the activation, that comes from that source. You know it's them because there's this incredible love. It's like a bliss situation. You feel the bliss. Um, Also, there are certain subjects that they are specialized in, that they are. So, for example, the Venusians will come in with a lot of work with relationships, a lot of work with partnerships, community work, a lot of work with the purity of the water inside, outside, because they really have a pristine situation in terms of resources, but in terms of their waters is like crystalline. It's really pure. So they have water technologies that are very, very advanced. They also have a lot of activations that have to do with opening the energetic centers of the sacrum, the perineum, working with the perineum, working with the womb, working with the ara, working with, which are terms that are known here. They have other terms. Working with the heart chambers, many heart chambers. We're looking at 5 chambers that are open, and then working with technology that is to do with sound, mantras, but of course star mantras, and infrared lights and blue lights, blue spheres of light, opening the third eye, so they bring in that, So if they come in and they want to reset your higher mind and rebalance your left and right hemispheres, or the left globe, and then you would question, because it's not one of their specialities, that is an Arcturian technology, or even an Andromedan technology. Alpha Centauros, they also very much they're technical and scientific. The way the activation comes about indicates the source, the origin of the source of the technology. But you have to feel this with your heart. You can't question it with your mind, because you won't get there. You won't be able to discern, With the Pleiadians, for example, it's all about the well-being, and a lot of the cell rejuvenation and recalibration of cell structure, the awakening of the dormant DNA, the junk DNA, My work with them has been mainly with that, and we worked with the Syrians because they are really, really incredible, what do we call it? Hypergeneticism. That's current. They're really, really good. So there's, so they specialize in this area. They specialize in opening the channels of your meridians, with this golden light, and bringing in the rose, different. We can call it colors, but it's frequencies of light. We call it the emerald, the rose, the Siberian blue, and all this is a codex with glyphs of information. Through the language of light, they work very much in repairing that dormant DNA, the junk DNA, and repairing the damaged one, repairing the junk DNA, re-harmonizing, re-energizing it, creating a new resonance for the DNA, and then aligning it, creating bringing it to balance. It's very specific that the balance is one of the keys. Balance and equilibrium and centeredness for the Pleiadian energy. So you learn that, and if something different comes through, hey, it's not that. because that is not what they do. That is not their area of specialization. It's something else. And it could be that they're working with somebody else. It also that they are doing cell regeneration and so recalibrating and resetting and reformatting cell structures to work in a different so changing the mechanism and the functioning of the of how the cells worked. It's now all reset and changed in a different way because the axis of the earth is changing from the poles are inverting. So that means that we are inverting. So we need to change. So this work, for example, is one of the major work that's happening with the Syrians and the Pleiadians. They make a team quite often, and then they fetch the Andromedans because they have a higher technology that can add to that. But each star nations have areas of speciality, and by connecting with them through the years, you are able to discern, if it is them or if it's not them, It's like getting information from a fairy who's dressed as an elf. The elves are all about, they're tricksters, first of all, and they really work with the invisibility. It's one of their, and if a fairy is trying to convey a message like that, then you need to question, and you can ask the question, apart from feeling from your body, with your body too. But if you've been connected with these energies over a period of time, and you know what type of work or has been shared with you, and with others that that also are connected with those beings, because that's important, because it's sort of indirect validation, then you know how to discern. It's not difficult how to discern. And they are in service to us, actually. They're not manipulating us. So the message, there's another way to discern this, and this is also I found in ceremonies, from people that come to me afterwards. There was one incident that this person told me that it was a Pleiadian energy called Solaris, and that appeared in one of the ceremonies and told her the next day to leave her marriage, leave her work, and go and relocate to Bali. That was the story. So I received this information. I know it immediately. This is not okay, because none of the star beings are a support. They nurture. They are a basis of information to add to our experience. But just to add to our experience, any decisions are our decisions. They will never give an instruction of any nature. None of these energies will come with a pack of instructions that I was told to do this and I'm going. No. None. From any sort, not even the elves, that they play tricks, no. If you receive a message that is giving you an instruction, or it might not come as an instruction, it might come something like, we suggest you do this, that, with a whole... No, because the whole thing is these star beings that are part of ourselves, first of all. We have the hybridization. So we have the genetic makeup inside. So if you are connecting with the Arcturians or the Venusians, you have that inside your DNA, otherwise you can't connect. So already in your genetic composition, you already have the coding to connect with them. That is why you are connecting. The main message from the council, I call it the United Nations, the councils of different planets and the Confederation itself, is we are here as a support structure to hold space for you, to show you potentials and possibilities. You have this array of technologies. If you tap into this, that, you have this array of potentials, But the choice is always yours. The sovereignty of the humans is one of the main concern, that the humans, because that's something that has been taken away from this planet through the inverted matrix, through the manipulation and control, the programs, the beliefs, and all that we've inherited. The restoration of your sovereign status as a being and the power, restoring your power, your freedom, your liberation, and your wisdom and knowledge is the highest priority of the Star Nations. In fact, all realms have that priority. So there is no ways they will come and tell us what to do in any form. In any form. You are guided. They show you this or that, and they communicate in different ways. Because I'm a seer, sometimes there's like a TV that opens up with many windows. All right. And if I need to see something, some of the windows will come up with a scenario that shows me that. That's a potential, that's a potential, that's a potential, that's a potential. I have a decision to make. Like now, I have a decision to relocate somewhere else or stay in Peru. So I got all these potentials opening up. They can assist that way, showing you, but it's you have that coding. That's why you are able to access it. They're not coming from somewhere talking to you and you don't have the coding. You are able to access it because you've got the coding. You can retrieve the information and then you make up your mind. You are free to decide, and you are encouraged, in fact, to make your own decisions. They'll never tell you what to do. They will never give you an answer. I remember so much. I was so frustrated with this developing the Sacred Worlds game, and I really asked for help. I said, I'm a very imaginative person. I'm a creator. I understand all that, but requesting assistance, give me a variety of potentials and possibilities as much as possible. And they said to me, giving, we don't. Give, no. Through life's choices and through your research and through your tapping into your own potential, you will find all these creative ways of putting together the game. We will hold the space for you to do that. That's it. So it's easy to see how the message is being transferred. It's an indication whether this is a true source or not. Because it's never about telling. It's sometimes never even about guiding. It's about showing you a whole variety of things. And It's not showing you like in a screen. It could be showing you through a book. So you have to pay attention. You have to be alert. It could be a book that you pick. It could be numbers in a car. It could be a music that you switch on the radio. You receive the message. It could be a battery of things that then you pick up the message. That is, okay, there's all this. Now I'm going to tune in myself and decide. That's not their role. They're not here to do that. They're not here to manipulate the world. They're not here to the. But yes, in saying this, they are not the good guys. Because what I found out through my years of connections with the Star Nations, with different groups, is that there are the bad guys also. So you're not talking just, it's like on Earth. You have duality, and so you have the ones that want to take advantage of this earth. They have greed for resources, especially they want our water, especially they want our gold, they want our mineral resources, They've been wanting that and draining this planet for that, The Greys did that, a wing of the Alpha Centauros, many groups. The Dracos did that, We know that acknowledgement is needed too, that not all star beings are within the pure heart, So you have to discern who you're talking to, but then those would give you instructions. You see, that's also the way they communicate to you is very different, or they cause a catastrophe to happen, and that goes with, now you have no solution, you can only follow that way, So, which is definitely not anything that the Pleiadians would do, or the Venusians, or the Andromedans would do.
I think that's a really important point, this idea of not deciding for someone the future in the way, because, as you said, in a way that takes away that freedom, that free will.
Yeah.
That's a really common archetype that I think you hear about in a lot of spiritual traditions, this idea of freedom, this idea of liberty. And yet also, it seems like in the world we're living in today, sometimes that's almost spoken of as like a dirty term. Do you think that's the highest potential of people, or this energy that on Earth we are embodying or trying to search, is this sense of free will, this sense of freedom, that's ultimately on an individual level and a collective level we're moving towards, or is there something beyond that as well that you feel? Because also, if there are these, as you say, these different star nations that embody these collective energies that are trying in general to help us, to aid us, what would you say is for humanity or for this realm, for this earth, what is the energy that's trying to be evolved towards? If there is this aid that's trying to lift, to support, to move us in a direction, what do you think that's trying to move us towards?
I think it's trying to, looking ahead in the present window, because everything's happening in this moment in time. This we are definitely moving in a positive direction, and this world, the world of competition, of control, of manipulation, it's breaking down, and we've got great assistance from our star brothers and sisters, but especially from ourselves that have evolved to that state of consciousness, to a lot of the groups that are in that state of consciousness, that are working from that frequency, assisting others to get there, and there are now millions. We were a small minority, but we're looking at maybe 7.5 million now, which is quite the potentials for 12 million is very soon. A lot of souls have evolved and accelerated in such a way that they are in service to that transformation that we are seeing in our world, and that the star beings that were working in opposition to that have been, so to speak, not permitted to interfere any longer, which is something that has happened in the last 3-4 years. Mostly last year was the last straw. So there is a membrane of non-interference in our planet, from any, potential threat from those groups that they call it the nefarious groups, that were could interfere on a daily basis, So there's very little occurring as far as that is concerned. There's still something occurring, but to the extent that the positive vibration and the high frequency beings that we already have here in this planet, and the ones that are coming in, through walk-ins, so walking into a body that is dying, and you've got another soul walking in just to come and be on service to this planet, new children that are arriving, we have, it's looking very positive, for us all, and also we are in the brink of shifting consciousness, a quantum leap in consciousness, where remembrance can happen. You start remembering what skills you've had before that are beneficial for what you have to do here. Not all your skills, but those that are skills. The people will start, and this month and last month it was quantum leaps in remembrance. That there's been an activation of the collective remembrance, of this in this planet that can be collected by human beings, that can surface in human beings as a spontaneous. It's like you are in spontaneous remission of remembrance, and we have periods. This is one period of time. There will be another period, by August, the same thing that will happen. So it's like infusions, and people that are expanding and awakening. If I look back, because I started this work, when I was in 2002, and compare, is like day and night. Every single day, people are surprising. They are expanding. They have insights. There is acceptance. There is surrender. There's a collapse of judgment in many, many, many fields. Even in the scientific fields, that was so construct. So there is a big wave coming in. It's very positive. That's my take, and it's everyone that has done the work and is doing the work is joining that wave, because let's call them pioneers. If they are pioneers, we don't have to label them, but this group of higher frequency consciousness that are beings that are physical in this body, with the assistance from the star brothers and sisters, and elementals and nature spirits that were ignored, So now you're connecting across worlds that you're not connecting before. Just that whole world that's opening of the elementals, of the fairies, of the nature spirits, of working in conjunction with the tree spirits, just that world that is now being tapped, that was ignored for a long time. Once we were all connected to that, but now that is also being reconnected. And big time, I find that the elemental energy in this planet is opened. So that the invisible worlds are visible, and that's taking place as we speak. It's taking place. And that's going to make a big difference. Because you don't have to receive anything from the star nations or the star beings. You can receive from the nature spirits that are right here, from the tree spirit, from the flower being, from the ancient stones. I mean, you go to sites, the stones speak, and they give you messages. But we've been separate from that. But now those worlds are becoming visible. And that's, I think, that's the big encouraging leap, is that whole world is becoming open to us.
Well, Yuka, just as we say that, the sun is shining in.
It's shining in. Yeah.
This was amazing. I really didn't know so much what to expect. We only talked for a little while, but I sensed something really beautiful in you, and just a really
Thank you.
deep...
It was a pleasure to share. It's also important to share, and sometimes there is resistance in that, I've always looked at myself with that because I've had resistance to openly share, But then, I got the message also through that embodiment that it's so important to share your journey, because your journey is not singular, It's the journey of so many people, so many. And so we can only add leverage to it, And if we shared each one of our journeys, we get so much guidance from it, and also interchange energies. So I think it's very important, and I'm glad that I've taken the time to agree to share,
Yeah, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah. If people are interested to learn more about you, or to work with you, or the projects you're working on, is there a way they can do that?
Contact me through wise woman, plural, or the easiest is to contact me through my website, yukiasandara.com or sacredworlds.com. So those are the two sites you can contact me, and the emails are there, and I'm until probably July, I'm really focusing on the launch of these new products, but I'm always available to share with people.
And do you do one-on-one work, or do you do
Yes,
workshops?
I do one-on-one work on an exceptional basis at the moment. So I'm not advertising, but if someone writes to me, I like to do one-on-one work. I feel that the planet needs it. And even though I'm on this project, I've always run sessions. Yeah, I haven't gone to advertise about it because I didn't want the volumes of sessions, but I do. It's something that I offer, is one-on-one work. At the moment I'm not doing group work. Yeah.
Well, wonderful. I feel like I could talk to you. I mean, we're over 3 hours. And I feel like we could easily do another 3. So maybe
you have to divide this into segments.
I think it'll be one segment. It's good.
Yeah.
I find people actually enjoy long form formats. It gives people an opportunity to really learn something, and
it was my pleasure.
Yeah.
And of course I'm willing to connect with those that are interested in, and that are, on the same path or beginning a path. Sometimes it's the beginning that's more challenging. Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Yukia. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. That's it. I hope you enjoyed that show. It was a very fascinating conversation for me. We went almost 3 hours, which for me is always a really good sign that there's a lot to be communicated, a lot of depth, a lot of different topics to go into. So thank you for Yukia for sharing in her story, her knowledge, and I really hope you all got a lot out of that. As always, if you are able to support this podcast, that's a really big help. It really allows me to continue bringing on these guests. Patreon is a really good option. It's a subscription service. For as little as $1 a month, you can sign up. There's different tiers you can sign up for. Those tiers give you different things back, things like early access to shows, bonus material, Q&As. As always, to all the patrons, to all the people who have done that, thank you very much for all of your support. I very much appreciate it. And if you are able to do that, thank you in advance. There's also the ability to donate via PayPal. I'll put a link to both of those in the show notes. And if you're not able to do that, if you're watching this, the video versions, albeit on YouTube or Odyssey, Rumble, if you can subscribe to the show with YouTube, turn on the notification bell, like the videos, leave any questions or comments in the comments section. All of those things really help with the algorithms. And then if you're listening to this, the podcast version, whatever platform it's on, but the biggest ones are Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and leaving a starred rating, a short review, all of those things really help with the mysterious algorithms. So I hope this finds everyone well. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you as always for tuning in, for the support. I have a woman coming up named Melanie Reinhardt. She's an astrologer. She wrote a really fascinating book about Chiron. That should be a really fascinating conversation. Probably last year I was interviewed on a pretty big podcast called Psychedelics Today. So the guy who interviewed me, I'm going to have him on this podcast. His name is Joe Moore. So that should be an interesting conversation. A guy from Blue Morpho, which is a big ayahuasca healing center in the Peruvian Amazon. Hamilton Souther is coming on. He's a very fascinating guy. And yeah, that's all I can think of right now. But yeah, as always, I hope to continue to bring on really interesting people, really interesting guests who can help to share in their knowledge, their wisdom. And I think that is it. So again, thank you all for tuning in. As always, I appreciate the support. I hope this finds you all well, wherever in the world you all are. And I will see you all on the next episode.
Dum